Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the 50-something podcast with me, Andy Barlow, age 57.
And me, Benita Matofska, age 57. And remember, I'm 3 months younger than you are.
She's back and she's still lippy. But
Always
we'll be
lippy,
all right.
Andy, always lippy.
Born lippy.
Born lippy,
Hey.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a generational joke, really.
It is.
Anyway, today we are again we're recording in an actual recording studio today.
We're being posh and fancy, aren't we?
I know, and it's quite nice because it's kind of the sound is really deadened. So it'd be quite interesting to hear when we play this back what it's actually like. So we're kind of we're changing the way that we look at things and changing the way that we do things. There's a bit of a theme here.
There is a theme. We're talking about change today.
We are.
Change in our 50s. I see the 50s as a time of change.
Mm.
So many changes are happening.
Well, we did say we in our last pod we did talk about this, which is then why we're picking this up again to be a bit more focused on it. So yeah, but sorry, Ben, you carry on.
Yeah, so there's so many changes happening. Personal changes to our bodies. It's such a bizarre time. You start you gain things you don't want, the belly and the kind of wings under the arms. I don't really know what you call them, but they sort of flap
Wingo
around.
bings, my wife calls them.
Okay, wingo bings, there we go. That's a good name as any that I've heard. And then you gain things that you don't want, and then you lose things that you do want. So you lose your bum and your eyebrows, which is just bizarre. I never knew that women lost their bum or their eyebrows. I mean, it just never occurred to me that would happen. But suddenly one day I was wearing a pair of jeans and I was like, where's my arse gone? It's completely disappeared. How did that happen? I mean, I exercise.
And what's with this monobrow?
What's the story? And what's the story? Well, where? No, it's just, they just disappear.
Yeah.
The disappearing eyebrows. So it is a kind of strange time. There's so many different things happening in your body. And I suddenly realized that I'd taken on this kind of like pre-Raphaelite kind of look. And I was like, it's absolutely bizarre. I mean, that's probably the nicest way of putting it. I was like, what on earth has happened? My shape is completely different. Mm-hmm. And, I've taken up all sorts of kind of wild and crazy things like wild swimming in the sea year round in Brighton. I mean, this is the woman that absolutely hated the cold. We'd be on holiday and my kids used to laugh at me because we'd be somewhere tropical in August and I'd be going, yowzers, it's freezing in the pool.
Did you really say yowzers?
Yeah, I always say yow. That was my thing, yowzers. I don't know where that came from. I've got absolutely no idea.
Scooby-Doo, I think.
It is Scooby-Doo, isn't it? Yeah, you see, there you go. There's another thing that happens in your 50s. There's all sorts of things that you remember from your childhood that you can't even remember where they came from.
Exactly.
But yeah, so, I took up this winter swimming, this year-round swimming, and it was really a kind of escape just to do something completely different. And then I just remember last winter, my friend Nicola had this great idea of, because one of the key things and one of the skills you need to acquire is to be able to come out of the sea and very quickly, as fast as you can, get dressed. It needs to happen at lightning speed. So anything that is going to cut down even 2 seconds is going to help you to stop your fingers from freezing.
Do you have one of those kind of like, it's like a
dry robe?
Yeah, a dry robe.
Yeah, I mean, you can't live in Brighton without a dry robe, Andy. Yeah. So you just can't even live there without a dry robe. They become the ultimate sort of cliche. Of course, mine's red and black, which goes without saying. But, so Nicola had this great idea of we could wear onesies, because if you've just got one thing to put on with no underwear underneath, then actually, that could be a really time saving. So I dug, I'm sure I've got a onesie somewhere. And then I remembered at some point my mum had this great idea of buying us all, in a particularly cold winter, gorilla onesies.
Excellent.
Gorilla onesies. And the rest of the family refused to wear them. They were given to charity shops. But I hung on to mine because you just never know when you're going to need a gorilla onesie.
Yes.
And so I just remember this.
I was looking for mine only the other day.
Exactly. You just never know. These are the sorts of things that happen in your 50s. And I just had that moment of being on the beach in a gorilla onesie with no bum and no eyebrows and looking completely pre-Raphaelite. And I just thought, this is what being in the 50s is all about, So it's like extraordinary changes happening in the body. And then I was involved in an accident. That's another whole other story, last November. And because I was in severe pain, I couldn't do any exercise. And so I put on about a stone in weight, and literally I was very pre-Raphaelite at that point. And I couldn't fit into any of my clothes. And I collect vintage clothes. I don't buy new things. I buy vintage things and I collect them. And It's all about extending the life cycle of the product and living as green a sustainable life as I possibly can. And I love my wardrobe, quite frankly. I've got things that I absolutely adore. And I couldn't fasten up my jeans. I couldn't, like, nothing would fit. And I was like, this just will not do. I'm not buying a whole new wardrobe, and I'm certainly not going up a whole size. It's not happening. And so
it's not only women.
it's not only women.
We boys, the same thing. Used to be able to go for a run, and you put a bit of weight on, you go for a couple of runs, and you could actually lose it again. Whereas now, we were chatting earlier, and I'm running. I run every day. I have one day off a week, and I don't know. Maybe I am feeling a bit more toned, but actually, it's I was saying to my wife when I first started it, oh, it'll be fine. 3 weeks of this, I'll be back to normal. No, it's just not. And I'm not eating more, or I'm doing the Zoe thing. We'll talk about that later. And trying to look after my body, but my body is kind of going, yeah.
The way I look at it is you have to work 10 times harder.
Yeah.
So whatever you did before, you've got to do 10 times more of that. And so I was on this absolute mission to lose the stone that I'd gained. And I just thought, right, drastic times, drastic measures. I'm not buying a whole new wardrobe.
Yeah.
And so from the 1st of April Fool's Day, I thought it's as good a day as any to start this, when I was physically not in any pain anymore. And I woke up and I was like, I can actually move without pain. Fantastic. This is it. So I restarted the Couch to 5K. I took up hot yoga. And it's something I always had a fear of, hot yoga. And particularly, I think, when you are in your 50s and you've been through the whole kind of menopause, hot flushes and feeling hot and not in a good way. And I just thought, right, I've got to do something that I've never done before. And it's been extraordinary. I signed up for one of those 30-day passes where you've got 15 sessions to do in 30 days. And I was away for about 10 days of that because I was working abroad. So I had to do a lot of cramming. So I was literally there all the time. I practically sort of moved into Yoga in the Lanes in Brighton.
Right.
Took up hot yoga, doing my running. I've taken up something called rope yoga, which is the most bizarre form of yoga, where you're pulling yourself up on ropes and kind of legs walking up walls and all sorts of weird body strengthening stuff.
All at the same time?
Doing it all at the same time. I'm swimming, but lane swimming. We've got a fantastic outdoor place called Sea Lanes, where you've got a view of the sea. I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. You're outdoors, but you can do proper lane swimming, and you're not reliant on, the sea swimming is fantastic, but sometimes the conditions or the sewage, depending on what's going to get you first.
Nice.
Exactly. Really not nice. So I just went on this intensive, and Pilates twice a week. So it's just the several form of exercise going on. And I put myself on quite an extreme diet. So 1 meal a day.
Right.
Lunchtime
Ladies and
protein
gentlemen,
shake.
we are not actually saying that this is a great idea and not necessarily to be followed. So just, use your own brains.
Absolutely. You've got to do what's right for you. But I was just very determined that I wanted to get back into my wardrobe, frankly.
Yeah.
And I've done it. I've lost 16 pounds
But
in however much time. So
is this sustainable?
So
what happens when you stop working out 17 times a week and only eating once a day?
So my plan is that I am, so the running is actually going to be now down to 2 days a week. It was going to be 3, but I had an interesting appointment at the doctor's yesterday, which I'll come back to because it all relates to aging. And I'm going to continue doing the 3 days a week. I'm going to do 3 days a week of hot yoga. I'm going to continue my swimming, my Pilates. So they are very much part of my kind of my routine. I mean, yoga and Pilates I've been doing for years and years and years. So the hot yoga and the running is new. I've done other kinds of yoga before. The diet, I'm just going to be, I've always been a healthy eater, really always been a healthy eater. So I'm going to start building back in a light lunch. So that, because I have been told. So yesterday,
so do you fast? Do you have hours between which you don't eat?
Yeah. So I don't eat breakfast. I generally don't eat breakfast anyway.
I don't eat breakfast anymore.
So I'm not really a breakfast person. And as I say, I've just been having a protein shake at lunchtime, and then I've been having my dinner whenever.
Right. Okay.
But a healthy dinner and no snacks.
Yeah.
So
I think snacks is the killer.
Snacks is the killer. I've stopped snacking. Snacks are the killer. And I don't eat any wheat, and I don't eat dairy. So that's been something that I've done for years and years and years. But yesterday I had an interesting time at the doctor's, and not necessarily in a good way. And I learned that I'd had to go for, after my accident, I had to go for a bone density scan, a DEXA scan. And so I have osteopenia, which is a kind of forerunner to osteoporosis. I've got it
Right.
in my spine and in my left hip. This is what I learned yesterday morning.
So
which-
osteo means crumbling, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so penia, what's penia?
So it's essentially, it's the condition that means you're at risk of osteo. It means there's some corrosion happening, but you're at risk of osteoporosis, which is brittle bone disease.
Yeah.
And it's very common. Over 50% of women have osteopenia.
Right.
So it is very common, particularly in women in their 50s. So I'm not alone in any of this. And there are things you can do about it. So it felt very depressing, and I was a bit shocked, frankly. Now, the bone density test was done, the scan was done before I started doing hot yoga and all this exercise. And actually, there probably already will be a difference because hot yoga, there are a lot of weight-bearing exercises in hot yoga, and that impacts positively on your bone density. So what my doctor is recommending is, she's saying, exchange one of your runs and you need to be doing weight-bearing exercises. That's what you need to be doing, because you can reverse a lot of the impacts of osteopenia. There is something you can do about it. And I guess that for me is the big sort of message really around change in your 50s, is that you have choices. We have choices. And I often think there's kind of almost like two categories of a mindset. There's kind of freeze and seize. There's people who want to seize the day. And you're that kind of person, Andy. You want to seize the day. You want to do something about it. You hit a problem. I'm going to do something about it. But freeze is where you just literally feel like you're frozen. You can't do anything. You're stuck. And there can be that tendency in our 50s to think, that's it. It's all over. I'm getting old. There's nothing I can do about it. And the brilliant news is that there are so many things you can do about it. And you can completely transform your life.
And that as well,
At the age
I don't want to derail this conversation, but that is also, if you get made redundant in your 50s, life is not over.
Absolutely.
You know, there are other things that you can do. There are other vehicles for you to progress through your 50s into older age, and still make money and still be relevant and still have impact. It's not over. And so I think, you know, like you say, you get an illness, you get something. You know, I was once in my 30s diagnosed with osteoarthritis, and a particularly terrible doctor told me that within, you know, a short amount of time I will be in a wheelchair.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? It's unbelievable, some of the
And
information you're given.
I thought, well, fuck that. Not a chance. Not a chance. So I started going to the gym, I started running, started working out, started lifting weights. I now have no arthritis. I've been checked, you know, the last sort of probably 3 years ago, and I have no arthritis. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, and, you know, compare this with my mum. And sorry, Mum, if you're listening, but she got arthritis in her 30s and has deteriorated. She's now in her 80s and can barely walk.
And similarly, Andy, you know, my mum, she suffered from arthritis all of my life, actually. So she got rheumatoid arthritis, so it's in her blood. She has osteo as well. She's got a double whammy. And it's a horrendous disease. It's an absolutely horrendous disease. And my mum's in her late 70s, and she's, you know, I was with her last weekend. She couldn't open up her hands. You know, it's a terrible, terrible, painful disease. But I think what's important really is that we know that we have choices. As you say, you did something about it. And that is always the message. And particularly in our 50s, we have a choice. Something happens in life, something dreadful happens in life, and it's about seeing the future as an opportunity. And that's how I look at it. You know, one of the things that I've started doing, so this year is my year of change. And I've just pledged to do different things. My friend Jane and I are doing something different every month. But on a personal level, I'm just trying to do as many new things as I possibly can. So I've started keeping It's called the 5-minute journal.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally doesn't take more than 5 minutes. So you wake up on a morning, it's next to my bed with my pen. I open up the 5-minute journal and, I'm asked, what are you grateful for? 3 things that you're grateful for. Boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Roof over my head, a bed to sleep in, food to eat, whatever it is that you're grateful for. Next questions are, what would make today great? And you come up with something specific and you really think about that question. Obviously, it's not winning the lottery, but it might be a walk in the park. A chat with a friend, whatever it might be, something that would really make today great.
Just positive thought.
Positive thought. And then you have your...
And that can be for anybody.
Exactly.
Can
be
if you
for
wake up and
absolutely anybody.
you
And
are
you
riddled
write
with
that
arthritis
down.
and you can't move, you can still think of 3 positive things that might make your day better.
Exactly.
That's actually really good.
Exactly.
I like that.
And it makes such a difference. And at the end of the day, you write, what were your highlights of the day and what have I learned today? And you learn something every day.
So you have to do it in the morning and in the evening.
Do it in the morning and the evening. And so the trick of it...
takes a bit of rigour.
It takes a bit of rigour, but actually what you do is in the evening, before you set your alarm for the next morning, you write your journal.
Okay.
In the morning, before you brush your teeth, you write your journal.
And how long have you been doing this?
I started in March, middle of March. So where are we now? So I've been doing it for a couple of months at this point.
Yeah. And do you look back at it? So can you do you see patterns or anything?
So weirdly, I haven't yet done that. But I was thinking the other day I should go back and take some time and have a look at that.
Going, oh God, what did I say yesterday? Oh, I can't say that again. You're going to come up with something fresh every time, is that?
And I think it's really, if you think about it, more like a kind of, it's like what comes into your mind, like stream of consciousness. Don't overthink it. Is what I would say. And you're given every day, you're given an inspirational quote at the top of the page. So it's something that you read and you think, oh, that's interesting. And then every so often you'll be given a weekly challenge, which might be something like invite someone for a coffee that you want to get to know better, or just something really simple. You get these kind of little
I like
weekly...
the idea of this. I don't know whether I'd do it, and I have to be honest, inspirational quotes drive me mad.
Okay. Well, some of them might, but it's okay. So you move on from that. I mean, the truth of it is that I was bought this for Hanukkah by some friends that live on my street. And it was really kind. They came along and they bought me this gift and they were very excited about it. And at the time, I've been bought several journals before and not done anything with them. They're just sort of piled up next to my bed. And this time I was going away. Lee and I were going away to stay with our neighbours who'd happily and usefully and helpfully moved to live out in Costa Rica and invited us to stay. And so that was in March. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to take that journal with me and I'm going to do it. And what you do is you read about in the introduction is all the benefits of doing this. Gives you all the health benefits of doing this. And then what you do is you sign up for 5 days. And you have some kind of something that you will do if you don't do the 5 days. You make a kind of pledge. And you just start, it becomes habitual. And so I guess the point is that I started doing these new things because it is very much about doing things differently. There's a whole science of doing things differently. It makes you feel happier. You're more likely to be successful. You have more energy. There's all kinds of positives around doing different things. You're rewiring your brain just to be more open and flexible and adaptable. And we need to be adaptable in this kind of world.
I do like that idea. And I do like that kind of agile aspect to how to our attitude to life. And I think if we are agile, we are open, then I don't know, that makes me happy. And if you don't want to talk about this, that's absolutely fine. But I'm just thinking about change and about catalysts for change. I'm thinking about Lee and change. And so Lee, Benita's husband, had quite a frightening illness not very long ago, which on the back of it, he's changed career.
Completely changed career. So, 1st of January 2020, so this is just prior to the pandemic, Lee woke up and he didn't look right, he didn't feel right.
He's never really looked right, though.
Well, there you go, exactly, and maybe felt right either. But and he went to the doctors, and first of all, he was given he had a kind of, there was obviously something going on with his skin. And the doctor first gave him some sort of medicated shampoo and sent him away. Anyway, the long and the short of it was, within 2 weeks, his skin literally stopped functioning, and chunks of his skin were
That must
coming
be
off.
terrifying.
His skin was red and cracked. He looked like an alien. And it was all it's a blur, to be honest with you, because we were at the hospital. It was an emergency. There were people running around talking about organ failure and all kinds of crazy things. I remember in the middle of all this, Lee asked me to go and get him a coffee from the machine. And I kind of ran down to get him a coffee, and I came back with a cup, and I remember literally putting my hand towards him, and he flinched because his skin was all exposed and his skin wasn't functioning, which we hadn't ascertained at that point. He had no temperature to control. So it felt like what was just a lukewarm cup of coffee from the outside of a paper cup felt like it was burning to him. And he was diagnosed with something called PRP, which is pityriasis rubra pilaris, which took a while to diagnose. It's incredibly rare. Took a while to say. You've got a greater chance of winning the lottery than you have of getting this disease. Now, we have tried to win the lottery because I did think that would be good karma, but that hasn't actually happened so far. But he was diagnosed with this disease, and it typically, either it's something that happens at birth or it happens to men in their 50s.
Wow.
It is a 50s disease, but it's incredibly rare.
Oh, it's very rare.
It's very, very, very rare. And ordinarily, typically, there's no known cure for it. It can burn itself out after 3 years. And what they prescribe is a treatment of a 3-year treatment of methotrexate, which is like chemo in a pill. You have to go to the hospital, a bit like going to have chemo.
3 years.
It wrecks your body. It has hideous side effects. And then there's another drug that has an even lower chance. And that methotrexate has a less than 50% chance of working.
Yeah.
The long and the short of it is, Lee didn't want to do that, understandably.
Yeah.
Understandably. And we literally were recommended, 3 different people recommended this Chinese herbalist.
Yeah, I find this fascinating.
And at that point, it was kind of he couldn't walk. He couldn't do anything with his hands.
Yeah.
You know, he was completely immobile and in bedridden. Anyway, we saw this Chinese herbalist, and within 10 months, he was cured physically. The emotional toll of it went on for much longer.
Yeah.
And that was the point of completely reimagining his life. He'd been working as a motion graphics designer, doing title sequences.
He's won an Emmy.
He's won an Emmy.
Emmy Lee.
Yeah, Lee Scratch Emmy. Lee Scratch Emmy. And this was a time to just completely, for him to rethink his life. And what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
And it also came back to some of the things we've been talking about in your 50s, wanting to do something that has a bit more meaning.
Exactly.
And giving back, and actually something really authentic, and kind of going back to kind of his art. And so he's retraining as an art psychotherapist. It's a 4-year training program. This year has been a year of a sort of hiatus year where he's been focusing on his placements, because you need to build up so many clinical hours. So he's doing a placement with Macmillan Cancer Support.
Brilliant.
And where you see clients one-to-one in you've got a room, like an art room, and it's extraordinary. And he is on a placement with a charity called As You Are, which is low-cost counselling, and that's a subject that's really dear to his heart, because he believes, therapy shouldn't be the domain of the middle classes. Why should it? Everybody can benefit from therapy.
100%.
And these things don't need to be taboo anymore. By having conversation and better communication, there's so many things that we can do. And so it's been an absolutely life-changing, extraordinary journey.
Amazing.
And very specific to something that's happened in his 50s.
So, I mean, that, fascinating. Amazing that Lee is now, up and about, but, retraining, doing something really positive in his 50s, that, a negative catalyst has created something positive. So that's brilliant. But we all need a little bit of stimulus now and again. We all need to get pushed. I believe that you and your friend Jane, I've got to meet this woman, Jane. She's going to be
Wonder Woman
featured
Jane.
quite regularly on this show.
She's quite extraordinary. So we pledged that in 2024, each month we would do something different, something new that we've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being Brighton is a place where you can find all sorts of quirky, crazy things to do. So in January, we did a wild storytelling sauna in Stanmer
Wait
Park.
a minute, a wild storytelling sauna?
Yeah, well,
What?
I mean, is that not something you've been
do,
doing every day,
do,
Andy?
do you throw your car keys in the middle of the table? What,
No, none
what
of that. None of that.
What goes on at a
What goes on a
wild
wild
storytelling
So
sauna?
in Stanmer Park, there is, which is a beautiful, beautiful park in Brighton, just outside of Brighton. There is a sauna, and it's in the woods. And there's an ice bath and a plunge bath.
Uh-huh.
And essentially on a Saturday morning, there's a wonderful woman called Fleur, and she has she's an MA in storytelling. So she's completely legit. It's not some kind of woo-woo, airy-fairy nonsense. This is a woman who really understands the art of storytelling, as opposed to me, who's just a chatterbox.
Yeah.
And what she does is, so you're in the sauna, there's about 6 people in the sauna, and she is telling you a story. And she's really able to read the sauna in terms of she knows at what point you need to go outside and cool down.
Yeah.
And it's really clever the way she breaks up this story and keeps you in, you know, it's definitely you go outside to cool down, but also then you want to get back in because you want to know what's going to happen next in the story.
And so does she pause the story while you're out? Or does she keep telling the story to the other people?
She does sort of pause the story, but she kind of links. So so after about 20 minutes, we came out of the sauna, and this is January, bear in mind, and she takes us out into this beautiful bit of grass. It's freezing cold, it's January, and she gets us to lie down in a star shape. So we're now meadow bathing in January in a swimsuit, looking up at the sky.
Right.
Now, luckily, the sun was shining, it was freezing, but it was blue sky and it was glorious, and you feel incredible. You're lying on the ground, and she related this lying on the ground to the story that she was telling. And then you go back in, and then the next time you come out, you might go in the ice bath, or you might just run around the park. But it was a really extraordinary experience. So that was January, storytelling sauna. I also did a singing sauna that month.
Oh my
that
God,
was quite
that
interesting.
Horrific.
That was fantastic. Well, I did feel for the 2 blokes.
Everybody else.
I did feel for the 2 blokes that were in there that weren't part of the singing sauna, because we didn't actually book it privately. But
you just started singing.
We just started singing. But since then, we now officially book singing saunas. But it's not all about saunas, obviously. So what else have we done? I took up face yoga. Okay. Which is meant to sort your wrinkles out. As you can see, has not had a particularly dramatic effect.
Well, you look like a downward dog.
But there you go.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, on that note. But yeah, face yoga, that's quite an interesting one. It is all about, you know, stimulating collagen growth, production and all of that great stuff. And and helping to iron out your wrinkles and all that kind of fun stuff. So I did that. We went in March, which was my birthday month. Jane took me on a mindful jewelry making day retreat. Mindful jewelry, right? Mindful jewelry. So it was basically, there was a kind of a reading beforehand. Right. Exactly. We were wafted around with some, you know, herbs, and we drank herbal tea. It was fabulous, you know. And then what we did, it was really interesting. Was so Jane and I always joke that we're both creative people, but we're not very good at making things. We're not very kinesthetic. We're not good at making stuff with our hands. You know, I mean, I'm useless at DIY. You probably remember that, actually, Andy. But yeah, hopeless at that kind of stuff. So the idea was, we're talking about doing new stuff, learning new skills to take ourselves out of our comfort zone. So Jane's idea was like, we're gonna make a piece of jewelry. So this woman, what she does is it's a wax carving. And she's got all little inspirational things all over the place. And as I say, you're sprinkled with, you know, fairy dust and all the rest of it. Honestly, it's bonkers. It's Brighton. What do you expect? And I have to say, I really wish I had this here to show you, but next time we meet, I will definitely have my ring to show you. I was actually quite proud of it. I think it looks quite cool, but obviously I have to see it when it comes back from being cast. But it did look quite cool. And so you carve this ring. You make something. It's a piece of jewelry.
I'm actually, next month, my birthday present for my wife, I'm going on a bronze making course. And I think it's either 2 or 3 weekends in June. And we make, we get a load of bronze, and we do wax, molds, and I've no idea. I've always wanted to make a bronze, and I'm not very good at making things. I draw things and I paint things, but I'm not really very confident at making stuff.
So you're going to make some sort of trophy?
I don't know. I don't know. Some sculpture of some description.
Wow.
Bronze. I just think it's so cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And this
but
is
it
what
might
I mean.
be rubbish.
Well, but you've been through the
it'll
process.
Be my rubbish.
It'll be your rubbish,
Yeah.
exactly. And happy accidents. You just never know, Andy, what you might create.
Who knows?
But this is it. I love this stuff. And so let's see what we've got coming up. Well, there's meditating with llamas, which is probably not your sort of thing, but it's very kind of very, very Brighton. What else have we done? So we went to the Sea Lanes for the first time, which is this beautiful outdoor setup in Brighton where you're swimming outdoors. You've got the sea next to you, and you've got the cliffs and the downs in the other direction.
Nice.
And that was just a really lovely thing to do that we'd not done before. We're probably going to do something called ecstatic dance.
Of course.
And
is this with llamas or without? Fairy dust?
Possibly.
In a sauna?
Possibly. Yes. Possibly all of the above.
Excellent.
All of the above. Why not? Who
very
knew?
Brighton.
Very, very Brighton. We are up in Whitby at the end of the week, Jane and I, and we're going to. My dad has a cottage in Whitby, so as part of Jane's birthday present, I'm taking her up there for a few days. We're going to do lots of hiking. It's Dracula country, so. But I have been to the Dracula Museum before, so that wouldn't be anything new technically. But we are going to some really crazy kind of psychic session.
Of course you are.
Which, being up at a northern psychic session, we just said, let's just do it. It'll probably be hideously tacky. Darren Brown, eat your heart out. Who knew? So we're just up for new things. We're up for new things. I'm going to start learning Portuguese. That's a new one.
Yeah, great.
Because Lee and I are looking to live in Portugal, or I say have some kind of home. I want to run retreats and do all sorts of crazy stuff in Portugal. Why not? So I'm going to learn Portuguese. Bloody difficult language.
It's a horrible language.
Really difficult language.
It's like, I'll tell you what it's like. It's a bit like Romanian. So it's a bit like is it a Latin language, Portuguese?
I should know the answer to that being a linguist,
Romanian's a Latin language, so it's French and Spanish and Italian.
Of course, yeah.
But obviously it's mixed with Turkish and Russian and Greek. And so it is a really, really bizarre but really beautiful, weird language. And Portuguese really reminds me of Romanian. And speak a bit of Romanian, but I don't speak any Portuguese. And I just find it weird that it's stuck on the end of Spain, Portugal. And yet it sounds so remote to Spain or France or Italy.
It's true, and culturally, I mean, I've spent a fair bit of time. I've worked out in Portugal. I used to go and speak at Greenfest, and I've run a few projects over in Portugal, and I absolutely love it. One of the most successful launches that I had for my book was in Lisbon. We had the highest attendance, and
I love Lisbon.
really extraordinary. I think it's an incredible place. But I guess my point is that we hear a lot about how it is challenging to learn languages in your 50s. And I know a few years back, I decided, because, as you know, I'm Jewish, and growing up in a more traditional Jewish environment, as a girl, I didn't have a bat mitzvah. My brother had a bar mitzvah, sort of coming of age when you're 13. But girls didn't get to do that in the synagogue that I belonged to, which was quite a traditional one. And so now I'm involved in progressive Judaism, much more liberal Judaism, where men and women and people of all genders, however people identify, it's an inclusive synagogue. And so I decided that I would, at the age of 53 at the time, that I would have a bat mitzvah, and I would do all of the learning that was necessary. You need to brush up on your Hebrew, and you've got to read from the Torah, from the scroll. And it's actually really difficult. It's much more difficult probably than when you're learning that at the age of 13. And the reason for doing it at 53 was I thought, well, I've been in the desert for 40 years. The stories of being in the desert for 40 years. I should have done it when I was 13. So 53, it all worked out. Unfortunately, it worked out that when I was meant to have my bat mitzvah was COVID. It was the 21st of March. It was 2 days before Boris Johnson announced the first lockdown. So I had to do it. Ended up having to do it on Zoom. I delayed it a year, and ended up having to do it on Zoom still.
Oh no!
But regardless, that process of having to learn a language in my 50s was so challenging. It was so difficult. I felt like my brain hurt. but it is possible.
No, my wife's Romanian, and I speak very little bit. She speaks English at home all the time, and doesn't really encourage, to be honest, me learning Romanian. However, we've started going back to Romania more, and we've got 2 nephews, and I now want to speak Romanian with my nephews. And it's brilliant because, like 7-year-old kid pointing at things and telling me what it is in Romanian. And he is teaching me, one of the boys teaching me, and really loving teaching me Romanian. And so I want, it's almost like the performing pony. I want to speak Romanian for Luca because Luca wants me to learn Romanian, and it's beautiful.
And
so,
it's so the kind of the reception you get when you make an effort. Wherever I travel, I always try and learn a few words. I always, wherever I am in the world. I was in Morocco in November, and my French is pretty good, but I was really working on my Arabic. I was really, really working on my Arabic because you speak a few words in Arabic, and it goes. People really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, the kind of big message really of the 50s is nothing is off limits.
Brilliant.
Nothing off limits. This is an age of change.
Yeah.
It's to embrace change. It's to see the future as an opportunity, and it's never too late. It really is never too late. And I also believe that what we do now in our 50s sets us for the rest of our life. We look after our bodies, we look after our health, we look after ourselves, we expand our minds, we learn new things. It sets us up for the rest of our life. To see the magic in the world, to see the magic in each other, see all the potential that's out there, and to embrace all the joy that life has to offer. It's all there for the taking.
Awesome. Ben, that is a brilliant way to end this pod. Thanks very much. You have been listening to the 50-something podcast with Andy Barlow, age 57, and
Benita Matofska, age 57, but just remember, I'm 3 months younger.
Oh, it's painful. Okay. If you want to contact us, please email us at 50somethingpodcast@gmail.com. That's 50somethingpodcast, all words, no numbers, 50somethingpodcast@gmail.com. And look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks very much for listening.